The Labour Party have suffered another loss, this time a former MP. Lloyd Russell-Moyle, the former MP for Birmingham Kemp Town, defected to the Greens, as reported in the New Statesman. Now, it's understood that Russell-Moyle plans to run for selection as the Green Party candidate for Brighton Kemp Town, hoping to regain his constituency seat. Russell-Moyle was suspended from the Labour Party in May 2024. This was after a complaint had been made against him, but the complaint was 8 years prior. Here is Russell-Moyle explaining what happened.
At the time, they said a complaint had been received, and they gave 3 vague statements on what that complaint was about, all before I was an MP. And I wouldn't tell me who had made it, but it was clear from the 3 allegations that that it was a complaint that had already been submitted to the Labour Party a number of years prior, and already been looked at and been considered to be either vexatious or non-serious. And the party said these were serious matters. And if you look at them, they weren't. And I said that to the party at the time, and I said, well, can I at least put my case? No, the decision's been made. You can't even put your case. You can't even write a letter for us to consider the alternative argument here. We've decided you're not going to be on the ballot paper. All you need to decide, they said, was how you want to resign. That was all the choice. And I pushed back and I said, well, I want to at least put my case that some of this is just untrue. And I was given 12 hours to respond afterwards. And they said, but the words they used, but it's a Hail Mary, Lloyd, don't expect anything to change. And so I put the case together, and including, during that 12 hours, I found out that the party had twice written to this complainant saying, are you sure you don't want to resubmit the complaint? So they had courted this complaint. A few months later pass, I'm off the ballot paper, I hear nothing from the party, and then I get a letter from the party saying, you've spoken too much about why you were deselected, we're going to start another disciplinary against you. And I said, well, hang on a second, Keir Starmer's office said that I had to make a statement. They said, you've got to decide the terms you resign. Oh yes, but the rules say you need to have confirmation from the General Secretary to speak about anything, and you didn't get it. You only got confirmation from the leader. So they then gave me a written warning of my conduct. And then in December last year, almost a year ago now, they wrote to me saying, we wrote to the individual asking for more evidence. The individual at that point has withdrawn their complaint against you, and we have no evidence to pursue, so therefore you're back in to the party. Let's forget it's all happened.
But you're not a Labour MP.
No.
And you missed the election.
Exactly.
Now, Lloyd contributed to one of the famous moments of the 2019 general election where he said no billionaires should exist, causing outrage from BBC broadcaster Emma Barnett.
Of the tax dodgers or of the billionaires, or are you on the side of normal working people?
The tax dodgers or the billionaires? Some people aspire to be a billionaire in this country.
Well,
is that a dirty thing?
I don't think that anyone in this country should be a billionaire. I think we should have a system where everyone is able to live well and wealthy.
You don't think anyone should be a billionaire? How are you going to stop that?
Well, I think you do it by enabling everyone to be very wealthy, to be able to profit from the gains of their work and their labour, and make sure that profits are reinvested into communities, not just sucked up by 1 or 2 people.
Why on earth shouldn't people be able to be billionaires? And how on earth are you going to stop them?
For example, in water, rather than allowing a few people to take the profits from our water companies and keep them in their own bank accounts, we will redistribute those profits of the water companies into a public water company. That is the kind of things that you do.
Excuse me, billionaires pay millions in tax. You are painting all billionaires as offshore, morally base individuals that no one should aspire to.
That's the kind of response you would hear from GB News, not the BBC. And I do love a response. What? You mean no one should be a billionaire? Yes! I mean, most people don't aspire to be billionaires. And even if they did, it's not going to happen. That's the point. The existence of billionaires is predicated on us being poorer, which Lloyd correctly gave the socialist answer. People should be rewarded by the fruits of their own labour. The Green Party leader Zach Polanski released a statement on the new defection. I'm delighted to welcome Lloyd to the party today. Lloyd will bring a huge amount to the Green Party. His story is one that is all too familiar, abandoned in the interests of power and profit over people and principles. Lloyd and tens of thousands like him have not left the Labour Party. The Labour Party has left them. Today, the Green Party has over 150,000 members and is polling second to Reform. The Greens are the home of progressive politics, and we're making hope normal again. It's worth pointing out, by the way, that the Greens have just announced that they've hit 170,000 members. So they're not 150, 170,000. Now, earlier today, I caught up with Lloyd to discuss his defection. I'll start off with the expected question. Why have you joined the Green Party?
To me, I have always worked closely and believed in collaboration. In 2017, the Green Party stood down and locally endorsed me, and tens and hundreds of the Green Party members came and campaigned for me in that election. So for me, I've always felt like collaborative politics were important, and the Greens have put their money where their mouth is with that. And now you see the Greens turning into a real broad church party that wants to make hope normal again, wants to actually deal with the problems that ordinary people are having up and down this country, as well as recognising that we need to improve the environment around us so that we can live healthy lives. And to me, that is a party that shares the kinds of values that I first got involved in politics for. And the Labour Party has moved away from those kinds of values. So those two parties going in opposite directions, and it comes a point where you have to make a decision. I go into schools and youth clubs around the country and I tell them, you've got to make a decision based on the party that shares your values, is going to listen to you and value your contribution, and is going to have a potential of gaining power to change the world. And I'm afraid the Labour Party is failing on all of those fronts, and the Green Party looks like a real alternative to turn around this country.
I suppose my question is, why now? I mean, you haven't been an MP for nearly 2 years for Labour. What is it about today, well, not today, the last couple of months, that's finally made you leave rather than maybe a year ago?
Well, I have... I'd be very honest. I was suspended from the Labour Party. I wanted to make sure that my name was cleared. And so I had to wait a year to go through that process to find out that actually I had done nothing wrong. I wanted to make sure that I came to the Green Party with a clear bill of health. I also wanted to make sure that the Green Party was going in a direction that I really supported, and the Labour Party had been given all the chances that they could to go in the right direction. I think you have to give people a fair shot of it. But in the last few weeks even, more nastiness has come from the Labour Party. This week alone, the idea that asylum seekers and refugees arriving in Britain might have their jewellery snatched by border guards. All you need is a zealous border guard there taking family heirlooms. To me, it's just inhumane, disgusting. The idea that we'll derogate from the Convention on Human Rights and the right to family life. This won't stop people wanting to come over to the UK. How you stop that is have fair and legal routes where people can apply. Well, every campaigner in this area has been calling for many, many years. Instead, what they're going to do is divide communities, make people more insecure, and of course, basically bully some of the most vulnerable people that arrive in this country. That is not the kind of thing that I can continue to stomach. And to me, those things over the last few months have been the final straw.
So you mentioned Shabana Mahmood and obviously the new policies on asylum seekers. Now, when it comes to social issues, when it comes to immigration, I mean, are you surprised about how much the Labour Party has steered towards the right? I mean, a lot of people would look at Labour and the Conservatives and say they're both kind of neoliberal, but at least Labour were kinder to minorities. And in fact, it feels like, you may disagree, but it feels like in the last couple of years that Labour have even moved probably further to the right than the Conservatives on social issues. What do you think about that?
They are clearly further to the right than the Cameronite kind of Conservative Party. Yes, I mean, that is absolutely clear. And rather than offering solutions, part of the job of a politician is to offer clear solutions to complex problems, and to offer hope to people that they can rally around. And the Labour Party seem to have abandoned that, and instead are trying to ape the most revolting bits of the reform agenda. And by doing that, they don't get any more votes. We see that in the polls. You see that even in Denmark, where they're trying to ape those policies. In Denmark, a green, red, socialist green coalition has stormed the polls in Copenhagen. And we see in parts around the world, actually, where socialists and greens are having to come together to defeat the old neoliberal kind of parties that have lost their way. And I'm afraid I think that this is probably what's got to happen here in Britain. And I see real hope in the Green Party to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always puzzled looking at the Labour Party. They keep moving to the right. They keep chasing reform voters. Polls show that's not the case. They're hemorrhaging support to the left, to the Greens. I mean, do you think they know this? The Keir Starmer and people at the top. Do you think they know they're losing support to the left and they're doing it anyway, or are they so out of touch that they feel like, oh, just one more move to the right and then they can win back support?
They have two ideologies. One is to make sure that they are bureaucratic rather than populist. They hate populism. They hate the idea that you can be popular with the people or that you connect with ordinary people. They want bureaucratic solutions. And the other ideology that they have is that they think they win by tacking to the right. Those are the two things that they really believe in. And I think that the public have seen that. And it does not work. You cannot out-reform reform. All you do is actually give them credence. Because what people say is, well, if you believe it, then it must not be too bad. Let's go for the full hog. I spent almost a year debating Nigel Farage. I have seen him close up, and I know you never win if you try and pander to him too much.
I really, really want to talk about Morgan McSweeney because it's hard to get an honest answer from any Labour MP. I think partly through fear from the top. I mean, do you believe it to be true that McSweeney has complete control of the party? And even if, let's say, Wes Streeting were to take over, it's still the McSweeney show.
Look, I do not know Morgan intimately, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But what I would say is I am pretty convinced from what I have heard, what people have told me, that the process went like this. Morgan McSweeney searched around for a candidate to defeat Jeremy Corbyn and Rebecca Long-Bailey. And they were looking for anyone, and they asked lots of people. And Keir was the one they settled on, not because they loved him, but because he seemed to be a good bridge to their project. And they said to him, do everything we say, and we will make you leader. They never thought he was going to be Prime Minister. And now what they have done is they've isolated Keir, they've got rid of Sue Gray, and they've got rid of others that were Keir's people. And all you have now is a puppet master. And because Keir doesn't have any ideology of his own, because he was just a bureaucrat for most of his life, he doesn't really have any views beyond kind of centrism. Then what you have is Morgan McSweeney calling the shots. They don't really want Keir. They would like him gone, and they would probably like him replaced with an even more right-wing person like Wes Streeting, who still thinks there's a role for the private sector to in the NHS.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems that way from the outside. So,
yes, I think that's the established wisdom in the Labour Party. The established wisdom is that Wes is going around on manoeuvres, and I know from relatively reliable sources that he is trying to make deals with people so that he could be anointed.
Yesterday was Transgender Day of Remembrance. I want to ask you, how do you feel about Labour's attitude towards trans people? It's been a real stark contrast in, I'd say, since maybe previous leaders were leader of the Labour Party and sort of Keir Starmer's premiership. There's many trans people watch this show. I've got trans friends. And they felt like, at least with the Labour Party, okay, they might not agree on a whole host of policies, but at least they felt safe under them. What's your view on their shift towards trans people?
Well, I was at the Trans Day of Remembrance Vigil in Brighton last night, and there is a lot of fear in the community, but there's also a lot of resilience and determination that they will not allow this government to bully them. And they will send those messages to their friends and family who will also not feel comfortable with voting with Labour anymore. I mean, I drafted a trans-inclusive conversion therapy ban only in the last Parliament, and we didn't get that through by 20 votes, and half of the Labour MPs didn't turn up to vote for that. So already it was clear that they were going soft on some of these issues. And now we see the ban that they then said, Lloyd, don't worry, when we get into government, we will make sure we implement that ban that you've written on, that you've consulted and worked on, that is trans-inclusive, that will really change people's lives. And it hasn't yet come forward, and it's all been forgotten. And in fact, you see the reversal. And this leak of the EHRC recommendations is just absolutely shocking on how that people can be challenged just on how they look. It will scare a lot of people. And I think it is going back to this process of Labour being rather nasty. They're nasty to their own members, and now they're being nasty to the public and people in this country.
Last question. Do you think we can expect more Labour MPs or ex-Labour MPs to join the Greens?
Well, I know my colleague Thelma Walker, ex-Labour MP, has already joined the Greens. So do I hope that more will come? Yes. I do hope more will come. I hope, and I understand many Labour MPs who want to stay and still have one last fight to try and save a party that's in government, because you can make a change to people's lives immediately. I understand the good, hard-working Labour members that are trying to resist what's happening. I say to them, I think you're on a hiding to nothing. They have controlled so much so far. They will block alternatives to the right-wing direction they're going, and it would be better to come and join me and hundreds of thousands of other people in the Green Party and really build an alternative and build a new future for this country. And I hope that they do come. I don't think that people will come before Christmas, but I hope in the new year people will see that they're at the end of the road with the Labour Party, and the only alternative in this country for real progress is the Greens.
I mean, I appreciate you can't say anything specific, but is there any maybe whispers that you expect that there could be some jumping of the ship, shall we say?
I don't think that there's any individual that I would name, but there, of course, are people that you and I would all know, and your listeners will all know, who have stood up for trans rights, who have stood up on environmental issues, who have stood up on social issues, who have talked about wealth taxes. Those groups of people in the party, honourable people, who I think should consider coming to the Greens. But I respect 100% their decisions if they decide not to, because it's about what's right for their constituents, it's also about right for them, and it's about how they best can change. But my view is that you can't change the party now. It's too late.
That was former Labour MP and Green Party member Lloyd Russell-Moyle. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this announcement?
It's obviously a good thing, clearly. I think the Green Party didn't necessarily do themselves a great deal of favour by sort of insinuating in a roundabout sense that there was going to be a sitting Labour MP, because they just announced there was going to be a defection. And so people was considering maybe there was a sitting MP. But, you know, that kind of slight fly in the ointment aside, this is clearly a good thing. Lloyd Russell-Moyle is in of himself not that important right at this very second, although we'll get on to the future in a moment. And he is problematic in a couple of ways, you know, his previous landlordism, although if he's joining a political party that wishes to abolish landlordism, perhaps he's in the error of his ways and stuff, you know. But what he is, and the way in which he is important, is not in of himself at the moment. It's what that is a symbol of. It's a symbol of a shift in momentum and a shift in the axis of power, if you will, if that's a phrase you can use about this, on the left in Britain. That the party that people go to now is not the Labour Party, it's the Green Party. When Zach Polanski was derided for his comment about we don't seek to do a deal with Labour, we come to take over from Labour. We come to destroy Labour, basically. In his victory speech when he was elected leader, he was absolutely correct. they basically have, in a spiritual sense, at the very least, for the time being, and very possibly in terms of number of members in the not too distant future, have taken over from the Labour Party. They very likely will end up with a similar number of MPs, maybe even more MPs, depending on exactly where the polling is and all the rest of it. And he is a symbol of this. A guy who was elected as a Labour Party member, as a Labour Party member of Parliament, who was then taken out by the right-wing cabal, as was he very eloquently described there, completely fabricated nonsense of a thing, in order to basically get rid of him so that they could parachute in one of their darlings. Absolute nonsense. So he's very important in that sense, and he's also important in another sense, because presumably he will want to run for his previous seat, Brighton Kemp Town, which the Green Party will have a significant chance of winning. It's a relatively progressive place, and the Labour Party vote is cratering there as it is everywhere else. And he has what very few Green candidates have, which is recognition, right? In the problem with having a party that's only just sort of risen to the kind of prominence that the Green Party has, it's gone from 50,000 or just over 50,000 when Zach Balansky was elected to, like you say, now over 170,000. It's tripled, more than tripled in size since he became leader, which is an astonishing level of growth. But it means that there's a lot of members. It's a genuine mass movement, but the actual infrastructure on the ground isn't in place, and that a lot of the Green candidates that will be selected in the next summer for the general election, whenever that takes place in this parliament, don't have recognition on the ground. They're not very well known. Whereas Lloyd Russell-Moyle is already well known as the previous MP there. He has a very good chance of winning there because people already know him. He was quite popular and absolutely would have won and increased his majority had he been allowed to stand for the Labour Party at the previous election. So he's important in that sense. There's a very good chance he could be elected as a Green MP. But sort of to his point, actually, and I think there's been a very interesting point he made about I don't think anything will happen before Christmas, because you got to bear in mind that the MPs at the very core of them are, I mean, really easily swayed donkeys, basically, right? They'll go back to their constituencies for a few weeks over Christmas and they'll have to mingle with normal people. They'll be outside of the Westminster bubble. They'll be away from the commentariat and the middle class dinner parties and all the rest of it. They'll have to go to Christmas events with regular members of society, and they will see how much the Labour Party is fucking despised. That's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of them. Now, most of them won't do anything because, again, they're kind of pathetic, scared individuals. But some of them might realise, actually, if I want to remain an MP, the only chance that I have of that is by joining the Green Party. And that's when you may see defections. And also another opportunity is potentially after the council elections in May, when they see how badly Labour are going to do there. They're going to get absolutely wiped out. They're going to lose control of major councils across the country, including very possibly Birmingham. You'll see defections next year. I would be surprised if you saw any major ones this year.
I think you touch upon a really important point, because it's not unknown to us that Lloyd has been criticised for some things, past landlordism. I don't know if he's still a landlord now, but of course that is a big wedge issue for us, especially in context of the Green Party's latest motion to abolish landlords.
Yep.
I mean, I suppose two things about that. One, I'm not so concerned if Lloyd is a very small-time landlord or lodger, because he's joining a party in which they want to abolish that. And policy matters to me. So I guess him joining the party is him saying, that's fine, I don't need to be a landlord or whatever. The second thing is, and this is if they implement a whipping system, which I would really like to see, a whipping system from the membership. Membership sets the policy and the MPs are whipped to them. Then again, you might not agree with him on everything, but at the end of the day, if you have a democratic Green Party membership, then I suppose it's the democratic will of the people. So I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't need a potential candidate for the Green Party to agree with me on everything. In fact, it would be kind of boring if everyone did just agree on everything. It'd be kind of pointless having a discussion at any point. I don't need them to agree with me on everything. I need them to have core principles that are solid, which he seems to have. He's talked about how billionaires shouldn't exist. Based as fuck. He's also talked about in that interview about how Wes Streeting still thinks there is a role for the private sector in healthcare and all the rest of it. So he seems to have his head screwed on in good key areas. So even if we disagree on some stuff and his reactions to certain things haven't been always perfect, I don't need them to be for me to think he is a potentially very useful person, both in terms of, like I say, the shift towards the kind of the shift in power towards the Green Party, but also as a potential MP or a potential candidate for that seat, because he has a very good chance of winning that seat. And I'd rather he win as a Green than someone else be put in there that I agree with more that has no chance of winning because no one's ever heard of them before.
Now, I recorded that interview this morning. And later, I did see a resurfaced clip of Russell-Moyle on GB News discussing the Israeli beeper attacks in Lebanon.
Lloyd, I mean, quite extraordinary events, but funny, isn't it? Israel, this very high-tech state, and yet on October the 7th, they were caught with the door open. Seems bizarre.
Yes, but there's been lots of criticisms, haven't there, about the intelligence on October the 7th. I think this, there will be some that worry that it's a new phase of war, as the Secretary of Defence said. I actually, and I'm not the biggest cheerleader for Israel out there, but I must say, targeted killings of belligerents in this kind of manner seems far better than bombing and mass captivity, which is what they have done elsewhere.
That's a fair point.
So if it's a more targeted phase of belligerents killing belligerents and civilians not, I mean, you'll always get some.
There was a 10-year-old girl killed.
You will always get some. But one 10-year-old girl out of 3,000 compared to what we're seeing in Gaza. Actually, I would welcome. I don't want any war, but I would welcome, if we're going to have war, something that's more targeted and
without huge civilian collateral.
Less civilian damage.
Now, what Israel did in Lebanon was a terrorist attack, blowing up beepers in the middle of the streets, in the middle of the supermarket. As acknowledged in the video, a 10-year-old girl was killed. Now, I get what he's saying about not wanting indiscriminate bombing, but one, Israel had no right to attack another country, and two, it wasn't exactly targeted. I think Lloyd should have called out Israel there, as he's done many times. He rightfully says Israel's committing a genocide. But I think that is a video of quite a flawed position to have. But this is the good thing about the Greens, though. As I said earlier, now I'm not a member, so I'm not doing Green Party propaganda. But it's a statement of fact that they are a Democratic Party. They don't shoehorn in MPs. Lloyd is standing for selection. He's not an MP. And the membership will judge him and scrutinise him.
Yeah.
Kevin, I'll let you have the final word on this one.
Yeah, that was poor. Let's be absolutely blunt about it. That was a very, very poor way of putting that. One possible mitigation, and I don't know exactly when that particular thing was filmed. It could be that it was still a breaking, because it said source, such and such and such in the Chiron. It could be that it was still something of a developing story, and he was commenting without absolute knowledge that we now have of what took place there. Now, it still doesn't, completely get rid of any fault on his part, but I think it's worth bearing in mind as mitigation. Now, in saying that, it's still poor, and I'd like to hear him retract that and maybe apologise. But even so, I think the fact that he acknowledges in that he's not the greatest fan of Israel, he's not a Zionist, which means at the very least he has chance for redemption in the Green Party.